The liberal media is once again whipping itself into a frenzy over President Trump. First up, amid the president's brewing battle with Stormy Daniels and her lawyer, Michael Avenatti, Trump-hating MSNBC host Mika Brzezinski is calling on the president to be removed from office.
This is one of the many, many, many ways this president has shown us that he is not fit. Possibly not even well. You are working for a president who is not fit to lead, who's going to do something crazy in 5 minutes, 1 hour, tonight or tomorrow. Like, what more do you need to hear from him to start thinking 25th Amendment or something else?
And CNN's Don Lemons piling on with his usual personal attacks.
Does he own a mirror? He keeps talking about people gaining weight and how people look. Does he own a mirror that doesn't have Vaseline over it or a cloth? I mean, all he has to do is look in the mirror. Donald Trump is no prize. And if I were him, not that I'm one either, I would keep my thoughts about other people's looks to myself.
But that's not all. Some in the media are trying to spin Elizabeth Warren's disastrous DNA reveal by using it to attack Trump.
It's really not about the veracity of her statement. It is ultimately a dog whistle that plays into the grievances of his base, his overwhelmingly white base, and it goes into multiple themes that are at issue for conservatives, predominantly around affirmative action and whether or not there are people who are sort of cheating the system by claiming to be minorities.
And the architect of the Iran nuclear deal, former Obama advisor Ben Rhodes, is parroting this new media talking point about the disappearance of the Washington Post columnist.
The message the Saudis wanted to send, and that they have sent, is that you're not safe anywhere if you criticize us. And the message that President Trump is sending is that there's no consequences. We have a president of the United States who says journalists are the enemy of the state. So values like freedom of speech and dissent suddenly are very endangered around the world. And that's a trend line that I think is getting much worse.
All right, Juan, let's pick up on what Ben Rhodes just said. I think it's pretty irresponsible to link the Washington Post columnist's death with President Trump's war on the media. I mean, that's just rhetoric. There's journalists that have been dying in Mexico for decades before Donald Trump started saying something like this. Do you really think he's responsible for the Washington Post blogger's demise?
No. But I do
Then why would he say that?
Oh, for a very substantive reason, Jesse, which is that you have press under fire in so many areas of the world. You cited Mexico. I mean, I've been to Mexico as a guest of the State Department to talk about threats against journalists. You see this in Turkey. You see this throughout much of the world. We know about Vladimir Putin's attitudes. But when the President of the United States, who should be standing up for democratic values, for press freedoms, freedom of dissent, says that the press in his country is the enemy of the people, perpetrating fake news, I think it does empower the autocrats elsewhere to say, well, it's just like the United States. You know, we're just going after them just the way the President of the United States goes after his critics. It's not healthy.
I don't know if that's the way to link it. I don't think you can draw that kind of connection. There's no evidence that it's empowered anybody in the other parts of the world. And the president loves the press, Morgan. I mean, he courts them like fanatically. He just did an interview with Bloomberg, AP, Fox News, and 60 Minutes within a week. And FBN, and he's feeding them all the time. He loves the press deep down.
Right, and in fact, when the president first came out, when the story first came out about Khashoggi, one of the first things the president said was he mentioned how it really was upsetting that he was a journalist and that this happened to him. I think what you're seeing going on here in this specific case of the Saudis is that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. The country team in these embassies and these consulates, they're working together. You know, we have legal attaches and all of these consulates and all of these embassies working with other three-letter agencies that are getting to the bottom of this. And I think the president is trying to give space to our governments and to the Turkish and Saudi governments to figure out what's actually going on and to hold people accountable. I
mean, we just heard all the sound, Dana, at the top. It's all spin. You know, it's spin on the Middle East. It's spin on Elizabeth Warren. It's irresponsible spin from Mika Brzezinski. Do the Democrats have actually any plans for the American people?
I think one of the things that is hurting them right now at 20 days, 19 days till the midterms is that President Trump is consuming all the oxygen in the media. So you were saying basically what he's decided is he's going to flood the zone and nobody else can get on television unless they're talking about him and talking about him in some way that would be derogatory, because that would actually get them headlines. So I think that is what's happening. Now, he has said in one of those interviews he doesn't necessarily think the midterms are a referendum on him. He has said otherwise in the past. He said he welcomes it being about him. But his actions show differently. He knows if he's out there and he's driving news media and his voters get engaged, that makes red state Democrats very nervous, because if just it doesn't have to be a majority of the Trump voters come out in those red states, then the Senate Democrats that are up for re-election will lose.
So, Dana, your point is that when he says horseface, he's exciting his base?
No. Oh. No, I didn't say that. I said he's doing all sorts of media. Like he said so many things on so many different topics. He said that the Fed is the biggest threat. Yeah. There's a million threads. You could pull any of them that you want to. My point is that he's just consuming all the oxygen, and that by tomorrow morning there will be another outrage that they can talk about.
I just think it's bad timing for Republicans to suddenly be insulting.
Well, we'll see.
American women.
I don't. It might be bad for him in House suburban districts. Yeah. It is not necessarily bad for him to be on the news all the time if you're a red state Republican trying to unseat a Democrat.
Greg, what do you think?
I don't think any Democrat can criticize anybody about bad timing after Liz Warren, after the attacks on Brett Kavanaugh. Give me a break. We brought up three things here. You brought up Mika, you brought up Rhodes, you brought up Don Lemon. I want to address all three of them separately.
Go ahead.
Mika, first of all, The Morning Joe reminds me of a political talk show you see within a TV show, like House of Cards. It's entirely fabricated and phony. It has the same faces doing the same things. It's almost like it's scripted for another show. And Mika is really, God love her, but she's a definition of stupidity, because she's eternally shocked by something that the rest of America is used to and shrugs off. For example, it'd be like going to get Indian food and complaining that it's spicy. It'd be like going to see a Tarantino film and when you leave, go, my God, that was violent. I'm sorry, but that's what it is.
And she knows Trump better than anybody.
She does.
She got friends with him.
That's the irony, is that she helped get him elected. Yep. She gave him more oxygen than anybody. Now, there's a professor, Gad Saad, who brought up a really good way to describe this, the difference between the media and the people who voted for Trump. The media obsesses over the peripheral. That means words, manner, and style. The people that voted for Trump can tolerate all of that because they focus on the substance, which is jobs, economy, peace. You're looking at peace in the Koreas. The Supreme Court, you're looking at the world's most competitive economy this year, beat out Singapore. Meanwhile, you have Ben Rhodes.
Take that, Singapore.
Yes. All roads lead to failure. This is a guy who has no right to talk about security. His naive arrogance gave us Trump because they created a foreign policy that sent, our leaders around saying we're sorry, and then we have a leader that gets elected that says, no, we're not. So there's a direct linkage between that. Lastly, Lemon has no right to talk about anything, given the fact that he basically snickered throughout the a segment mocking Kanye's mental health and calling him a bunch of disgusting names. And he said that Trump could use a mirror. I'm sure Lemon must have 100 of them at home. You could loan him.
I mean, TV is a pretty aesthetically oriented industry. I don't think anybody on TV can talk about looks like they don't really know.
I can.
Yeah. Yes, correct.
You can tell I have no ego.
You're the most handsome man on Fox News. And I'm comfortable in my sexuality, so I can say that.
Yeah, but Greg, I was going to ask you, but don't you think that these comments are adolescent? You say Trump supporters just dismissed them, not a big deal. But I think the fact that he keeps going after American women in terms of their looks, at some point you say, this is the president?
You're wrong. He goes after everyone. He goes after men, women. I'm sure he's gone after children as well. We just haven't caught it. He's gone after animals. I'm telling you, Ted Cruz.
Sweaty, Marco.
Yeah, come on.
Remember Romney walks like a penguin?
Yes.
He does that to everyone.
And he wasn't far off on that.
And what I was saying to Greg, though, is it's about women's looks or You
He's
know,
not a sexist.
functions.
He
I just
will
think
make
it's
fun of
awful.
everything. He's not. He doesn't
Look,
see
I'm just
gender.
telling you, I think women are very uptight about their looks. And if I say to
Well, wait
a
a
That's a
woman,
minute.
sexist comment.
oh, that's a sexist comment. I think
You know
it's
what?
the
Women
truth.
are-
I'm uptight about my looks too, Juan.
Dana,
No,
did you know that women are uptight about their looks?
Oh,
How does that make
yeah.
you feel?
Yeah.
Thanks for mansplaining to
And
us.
they're high.
That is mansplaining. Are you uptight about your looks, Morgan? No, that's that's the assumption.
I mean, I think everybody who's on television are. I saw you staring in the mirror before we.
Yes, but you know why? How can I not? How can I not stare at
But
this?
that's like you don't invoke the
boy.
25th Amendment because the president said something you don't like. Like the 25th Amendment was meant when someone is incapacitated, not because you think the president's a jerk.